them. And do you see where this is going?
Oh, yes.
This is a situation where we have the opportunity to say, stop, enough, and we don't, and it backs up in us, and now we're going to take it out on them in a different way, when all we have to say is, enough.
Say no.
Go ahead.
Then, what's even worse is you get to the point where you compromise your morals and values.
Yes. Because
all of these new negative emotions and actions you're incurring, you've changed into something that you never intended to be.
Yes.
And
that's what happened to me. Like I said, I just turned into just, I come out here to create a different lifestyle and to get things going, and continuously being hit with other things over and over again, and watching our life be so affected was just more than we could take some days. And then ultimately you end up feeling anxious, physically exhausted, and run down. Because of the extra work that you do and all the worry that you're consuming and all the extra emotions you're experiencing, it does begin to physically affect your body and eventually make you sick. And those sicknesses can manifest, and we wonder why we have so much autoimmune,
right.
Why we have so many different kinds of cancers, why we have diabetes, we have just all kinds of diseases. We're such a stressed out society.
Well, and that was one in the stress management class that we were taking. Our instructor had mentioned that she had a genetic condition that triggered from what she thought was stress.
Yes.
Stress triggered this genetic condition. She did not believe it was something that had to manifest in her life if the stress wouldn't have been there.
Sure.
And, a lot of people do have things trigger like that, like the autoimmune system.
Exactly.
Disease, like, arthritis, like all sorts of other things in their body.
It's true. People get different diseases, different things, and it's not just having the heart attack or a stroke, although those are the top of the list. And when people say, oh, my blood pressure's fine, or this is that, don't think that that's not manifesting in other ways. It's going to seep out of you somehow.
It's
going to seep out. So moving forward, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, so moving forward, we have 4 main areas to set boundaries in.
Yes.
And let's start with the first one near and dear to my heart, love relationships. In order to have a healthy, balanced relationship, setting boundaries with each other is paramount. When dating, you're able to make better determinations of compatibility when you've observed other people's boundaries and consider the boundaries of the other person.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, consider the following areas in a love relationship. Your communications.
Very important.
Situations of abuse,
mm-hmm.
sex, spirituality. That's another big one.
Well, yeah, especially when you're in a relationship and you're dating and you maybe have a different religion. And one person says, oh, well, I'm Catholic and we're going to do this Catholic and we're going to raise our kids Catholic and there's not going to be any two ways about it. You may not feel like you can speak up and say, well, I don't want to be Catholic. I want to be something else. Well, we're not doing it that way. My family's been this way for 150 years, and we're not changing it.
Or you could have a situation where one person is not religious at all.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
They have no respect for the other person's
beliefs.
Sure. And that can cause some major issues.
Those are boundary violations. That's someone violating your space.
Sure is. So another area that might be a little touchy is finances.
Yes.
Child raising.
That's another one. You may have child raising is such a huge, huge issue. I just want to touch on this for a moment.
That can be a make or break.
That can be a make or break. Sometimes people get into a marriage and they may not have a problem with the way that they raise their children, but in-laws and grandparents can step in and say, well, this is the way we do it, and this is the way you're going to raise this child. That's my grandchild. And you're sitting there thinking, wait a minute, this is my kid. People from outside the family can make your life very challenging if you don't learn to draw that line and say, excuse me, this is my home, and however it is that you want to learn to phrase that. When people tell you how you should be doing things, that's violating your space. They don't have the right to do that. Go ahead.
Sure
I'm sorry.
Is. No, that's
that's just a very passionate area for me when people feel that they can tell you what to do with your children.
One of the big ones.
Mm-hmm.
Family. Ex-spouses and children from previous relationships. That's right up there with child raising.
Yes.
Infidelity and flirting. Those are areas that sometimes you really have to set strong boundaries and say, no, this isn't acceptable.
Exactly. And some people have just that precarious way of acting, and they think it's cute, or they think it's this, and they think it's funny. It's not cute. It's not funny. It's not charming. It's old. It's flirting, and it's unacceptable.
Exactly. And Addiction and domestic violence, some real serious subjects.
Well, we've talked about addiction a lot, and when you're with an addict, there has to be some types of limits in place, because there's only so many times you can take a person falling off a wagon, or so many times that you can take a person being unfaithful. There's different areas in your life where setting limits for yourself and having that respect for yourself and that empowerment to do so is very important. Okay, next we're going to talk about career. And this would include your overbearing boss, coercion, feeling like you have to do things at work that aren't exactly legal or fair. You may be witnessing off-color jokes or sexual harassment, homophobic behavior. You may be expected to work overtime for no pay, or for at least the proper pay and overtime. You may feel like you have to extend your hours because that's what everyone else does. It's kind of that group coercion type thing going on. Well, we all work 1,000 hours, so we're expecting you to work 1,000 hours too. That's abusive.
Exactly.
And that's something that needs to be spoken on too. We have bullies on the job site. We have people with a lack of professionalism, not dressing appropriately, not talking appropriately. That kind of goes along with sexual harassment as well. And people or bosses and managers that make you feel like you can't use your personal time off.
Oh yes,
which you had that, yeah.
I've had that where they like to plan your personal time off with. It may be the weekend, but no, we're going to be working this weekend. It's like, wait a minute, this is the only time I have my kids.
Sure.
Where I'm at, I have decent bosses, so that is not a big one.
Oh, I've had jobs before where I go to take and this comes into a certain thing here. Of course, if it's your company's busy time, you're not going to ask to take 2 weeks off when you're in the hardest season. But if it's in reason, you have the right to take your time off. So family,
sure do. So family. It's another area. Most of us get our broken boundaries in our developmental years through experience with family members. And those areas can be, all types of abuse.
Yes.
Controlling behavior. Someone who makes condescending remarks all the time.
My ex-husband had an uncle who, every time we saw him, would always have something negative to say. The minute he walked in the door, it was always some type of, looks like you didn't get a new car yet. Looks like you're still working the same. Always something. Finally, I told him, you know what, you need to just shut up. And not that I'm telling people to shut up all the time. And that, was probably inappropriate at that time for me to say that. Right. It was one of those where it had been going on for about 10 years, and it was just enough. Of course, I would say it differently now, but go ahead. Or maybe not. I don't know. No, I'm sorry.
So, along with condescending remarks is rude relatives, and the ones that always have that excuse of, well, they've always been that way.
Yeah.
You know what? That's no excuse.
It's not.
That's an excuse for poor behavior, but it's not a good excuse. Now, you have people that talk negatively about your choice of careers or choice of partner. You have people that talk about the way that you raise your children or keep your house. And you even have people that talk about the way that your partner raises your children or maintains your house.
That's a common one.
Those are very
people
common.
That criticize the way you keep your house, the way you raise your children, or the way that your spouse is, kind of things like that.
And that's to me that's kind of lowbrow. But people like to talk and comment on this very personal subject, the way you spend your money.
Oh yes.
That one I find is just so wrong.
So you can afford to buy a new house, or how much is that new car, or how much is this? Where are you getting the money for that? Where are you getting the money for this? Those are personal questions.
Sure are. That's about as personal as questions about someone's sex life.
Sure.
You just, it's poor etiquette. You don't talk about those. You also have people that will comment about your weight, your lifestyle, your sexual orientation, or your choice of friends.
And it goes back to usually it's one or two people. It's usually it can be like a group of family members too that think it's their particular right to talk about your weight. Like I was telling you when we were writing this, I had a friend who was overweight, and every time we went somewhere, it was her sister that always felt the need to say, you need that second cupcake. Do you really need to be eating those chips? Are you eating that chicken? I mean, it would always have something to say. It's like, and everyone would laugh and think it's funny, and my friend would laugh at the time too, but inside that really hurt her.
I bet it did, because there's nothing funny about when you make comments about someone's weight, or when you make comments about someone's lifestyle or their orientation. It's not something to really
It's not funny. So lastly, we're going to talk about friendships and some of the common ways that our friends break our boundaries or instill their boundaries upon us. People that are always being late. People being late, breaking plans, and not following through. Those are my three biggest pet peeves with people, because when I say I'm going to be somewhere, I'm there and I'm not late.
Right.
If I'm late to be somewhere, something's very wrong. I've been in an accident. And when people are late or break plans and don't follow through, aside from, obviously things do happen, they go wrong, that sends the message that you're just really not important. And that you just don't really care, and that's a boundary violation where you could have at least given me a heads up and saying, oh, we're not going to be doing this, and give the person an opportunity to break plans and make other plans.
Right.
Flirting with someone's significant other.
Ooh, that's a big one.
That
can be kind of rough.
Again, it's not funny and it's not cute. People not paying their own way. People borrowing items and not returning them or returning them broken. Lying, stealing, gossiping. People overstaying your welcome. We've always had people, when I was married the first time, we had a few people that you had to shoo out the door. And of course, the one of the newest ways is social media. Playing the poor me, playing the victim, eliciting attention, vague comments. That is pushing on other people on your Facebook site and eliciting from them a response. You're looking for attention, and you're it's like forcing your need or your will. You're
out there fishing. I've seen that time and time again. People will be out there fishing and they'll make vague things on purpose.
Yes.
Because as we all know about Facebook, if anything can be ill-conceived or misconceived, it will be. Yes. I mean, it's you're approaching things. So many people. I saw this sign on Facebook the other day that had a laundry hamper and a Facebook icon, and it said, "Put your dirty laundry here, not here."
Yeah.
And it's so much. There's so many things where you see, yet again, like we said, the broken boundaries of telling all.
Yes.
On social media. I think we're going to have to do a show on social media.
I've been thinking about it.
It's amazing where that could affect you in a career and everything else.
There's nothing. Of course, we had a friend of ours that just lost his wife last week, and certainly social media is places where sympathy in these areas, and we get around a person, we rally around, we celebrate events, we care for each other when bad times happen. I'm not talking about obvious things. When people get married, that's perfectly acceptable.
Well, that's a good place to announce these things so everybody can. If you have a family member that passes away, the last thing you want to do, like when my father passed away, the last thing I want to do is tell the story over and over and over.
Right.
After a couple of times, it's like, you know what?
And Facebook, we put it out there. Everyone sees. People can come by, and those are all perfectly acceptable ways.
Wish you well. They can leave prayers for you. They can do whatever that would help ease the pain.
Oh, for sure. So anyway, moving on now, we're going to go into, before we take a break and have Natalie come on, we're going to go into the 10 ways to create boundaries for yourself. Now, this is from a website called Psych Central. It's www.psychcentral.com. And this is from a well-known life coach and psychologist. Her name is Dr. Dana Gionta, I want to say is her last name. It's Gionta. She's a PhD. She's been on Oprah. She's been on the Today Show. She's written a few books. And she has a really awesome perspective on how to create boundaries. And she is one whose book that we're using in our business, unless we can create something else better, which I don't know, because this just about hits it out of the park on the best ways to create boundaries for yourself. And as coaches, we invite you to use these and sample these for yourself.
So the first one she has is name your limits. You can't set good boundaries if you're unsure of where you stand. So identify the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual limits. Consider what you can tolerate and accept and what you can't. And then what makes you feel uncomfortable or stressed. Those feelings help you to identify what your limits are. When you
like you're saying, usually when you have a feeling behind it, that's a signal that something's not. Okay, number 2, turn into your feelings. She observed 2 key feelings that are red flags or cues that you are letting go of your boundaries, and that's discomfort and resentment. She suggested thinking of these feelings on a scale from 1 to 10. 6 to 10 being in the higher zone. If you're at the higher end of the scale during an interaction or in a situation, she suggested asking yourself, What's causing this? What is it about this interaction or this person's expectation that's bothering